And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir.
It feels really weird that it's a Monday with everything that's going on right now. I can't even keep up with all the stuff that's going on right now. We're a week from Christmas, and we've got all of these freaking headlines to keep up with, Blake. I don't even know where to start. I legitimately don't even know where to start today.
Well, I think maybe, and obviously Wednesday we have the early signing day. I think maybe we should start with Dylan Raiola, who number one, number two kid in the entire recruiting ranking of 2024, announced today that he is flipping from Georgia to Nebraska, which is a massive haul for Matt Rule. I'm sure we'll start there, but not even that, man. You got what some people thought a middle tier OC going to a loaded roster at Troy and Gerad Parker, okay, which we got to talk about. USC is losing more 5 stars than anybody in the country, okay? We got to – is USC in trouble? Oh, and by the way, they just lost another one because Tackett Curtis, the linebacker, just hit the portal. So many things to talk about. Oh, and by the way, we got the holidays, so we got to talk about who do we think is going to win the playoff games.
Yeah. Impossible
massive
to keep
Monday.
up with it. Yeah, massive Monday.
Oh, and by the way, we just did an interview with somebody we'll announce tomorrow who's a big name in college football. I mean, it's just, what a Monday, my man. Good to have you here with us.
Best time of year. National championship is right around the corner. I have to also throw in there a quick shout out to the famous Toastery Bowl. Ended up being a hell of a late game. Western Kentucky storms back 28-0. I would have totally had said that game would have sucked. I mean, I don't think anyone would have expected that game to be entertaining. It's called the famous Toastery Bowl, and it was in Charlotte, North Carolina. There was nobody in the stands. But, man, these bowl games are already off to a pretty good start.
Very much so. I've been highly entertained. I love college football, so I'm going to sit there and watch it. I'm sitting there in my office today, right here in the studio too, watching bowl games. I can't get enough of it. Western Kentucky, and then you got the girl who's waving the towel around like her name is Petey Pablo. Take your shirt off, whip it around like a helicopter, North Carolina, born and raised.
I got to say, and I'm not to be redundant, I think my favorite part about like this period of time is the fact that we do have all of these games on in the middle of the day that you can just flip on the TV and it's like, here's a random empty stadium that has 2 random G5 teams that are playing one another. I'm a little bit of a sicko like that. I don't know if the rest of the college football community is like that, but the fact that there's all these games on in the middle of the day, it's just, it is so perfect, Blake. It is so perfect. It's just a nice little taste before we get to the national championship and the rest of these New Year's 6 games.
Well, you need to put your TV on your wall or put it on a stand. You need to stop watching your TV on the ground.
I have one on a stand. I just happen to not have, a stand for the one that's resting on the floor.
Okay.
It's the secondary TV. It's the lower TV.
All right. Whatever you say, man. Whatever you say. All right. Joe, we do have a lot that we got to get into here today. So let's not really waste any time. We'll talk about Raiola. We'll talk about the playoff, our picks of the playoff. We'll talk about Gerad Parker to Troy, who does Notre Dame target, which, by the way, heating up the LSU-Notre Dame rivalry even more. I see nothing but Notre Dame fans begging Mike Denbrock to come back.
I know that he just got the extension. I don't know if it's so much begging him to come back.
I have a tweet right now bookmarked begging him to return.
Look, there is a connection between Mike Denbrock and Marcus Freeman. So it's not like that I'd be willing.
You know what that connection is?
What?
Brian Kelly.
I'd be willing to bet that at least there is a phone call between the two of them. Maybe at the very least of saying, like, is there anyone you'd recommend? Hey, would you be willing to leave Baton Rouge? I'm obviously joking. They're not getting Mike Denbrock. I know they're not getting Mike Denbrock.
And if they do, Notre Dame, you're not going to pay the payout for Andy Ludwig.
They got a new administration. They got a new administration.
They're not going to pay $25 million to buy out Mike Denbrock.
I know. I will say this, though. I really think that the right move for them to have here is that they need to hire last time I wanted Andy Ludwig, he's still on the radar for me, and I think that they should maybe revisit that. It might kind of be, a sour situation. But this time around, I think there's a lot of really good offensive coordinators in the SEC. There's a couple coaches, and if they want to take that next step, get one of these creative minds. I won't reveal some of the names that I want to throw out there, but there's a couple really good creative minds. There's one that has a connection to Notre Dame that I won't say, and you can probably guess who that is, and I'll bring it up later in the show.
I like my offenses like I like my ladies' legs.
How's that?
Spread.
Hey, man, look, your terrible joke aside, the best.
Oh, that's not a terrible joke. That's a really good joke.
The best that Notre Dame has been when they ran a spread offense, when they ran it under Brian Kelly. Not the crap that they tried to run with Charlie Weiss and anything before that. Although when they ran the option a little bit with Lou Holtz, that obviously was, a different era. But they got to go back to the spread. I get one of these offensive coordinators in the SEC that's producing a lot of good offensive players.
I wonder if Marshall has an OC. All right, we got a lot that we need.
You're a dick.
You know that if LSU would have lost to Marshall at home, you would be talking about it all the time to me too. So stop.
Probably.
Yeah, I know you would because you're just a jerk like I am. Got a lot to discuss. Dylan Raiola we'll start off with, as well as USC in trouble. Gerad Parker, who is OC, the next OC, going to be at Notre Dame. And as we mentioned, we'll do the playoffs as well. Let's waste no time here, Joe. Let's get into it. Let's talk about our good friends over at BetOnline. Before we do that, everybody do us a favor, by hitting the like and share to all those groups on Facebook, share to your own social media pages. Wherever you're watching, listening to us on YouTube, like, subscribe, notification bell. I don't know, Joe, how far we are from 4,000 subscribers. I think maybe like less than
30.
Okay.
30.
So we need 30 people to go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. And I think we're going to do something if you give us a 5-star review.
Oh, okay. So I wanted to bring this up yesterday. We want to start implementing as the offseason comes around. We want to start doing a mailbag segment. We're going to do one question at the end of every single episode. The only caveat is we're only taking questions if you drop on Apple Podcasts a 5-star review, put your question in the review, and we will answer it on the next upcoming show. If we end up getting a lot of questions, we'll do more than one per episode. But if you're a fan of the show, help us out. Give us that 5-star and also give us the question. We'll answer it on the next episode.
Well, speaking of 5 stars, Nebraska just got one. And Elks sends us a $2 super chat. Says that
Stop
Brian's
it.
parents
Stop
will
it.
Go see at Notre Dame. Thank you for the super chat. This is the best comment we've had all day so far.
I would quit doing the show if they hired. There's two.
All right, hold on. Stop
the
giving
only thing,
yourself ultimatums, because the last time you gave yourself an ultimatum, you said if Jaden Daniels was a first-round pick, you would eat a hat. So you need.
They're not hiring Brian Ferentz. Okay, they're not that stupid. But I think the only thing worse is if they promoted internally. That was the one thing that I knew. If they did that again, I'm done talking about Notre Dame on this show. I will. You can talk about them and I will listen, and I will not talk about Notre Dame again. If they promote internally, I'm done spending time giving them attention on this program. That I will stand by.
All right. I don't disagree with you. All right. We got a lot to discuss. Let's waste no time. We're back next. Dylan Raiola making the flip. Big news. We'll talk about it. Stay with us. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events, with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. We're back. You might be surprised with my pick here tonight, Joe. You might
pick Texas because you're a massive hater and you're going to pick Texas. Texas versus Alabama is going to be your like you're so easy to predict. I'm going to be surprised. You're so easy to predict.
Do you want to make a little wager?
No, because you told me yesterday that if you ever say that means you know something. So no, I don't want to make a wager.
Clearly, I got it on my notes right here. We'll talk about it. All right.
Yeah.
5-star recruit, 5-star quarterback, the number 2, or I guess, or number 1, whichever service you look at, Joe. Dylan Raiola, or Raiola, however you say his last name. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. Was at Buford this past year, transferred to Georgia, but made a big announcement today. Also, a big announcement came from Georgia today that Carson Beck was returning too. Joe, this was kind of the biggest secret that everybody knew, that he was going to flip. I guess, what's your thoughts on Raiola flipping to Nebraska?
Yeah, we already kind of covered what the magnitude of this would be for the college football landscape. I think just plain and simply, this is extremely big for Nebraska, and that's not a hot take. No one's going to be sitting here like, wow, how could you say something like that? The way that this creates momentum for the program, if he sticks around, if he stays for the entirety of his college career, I think that, one, there's a capability to flip some of the offensive weapons, some of the players in this class to come join him, kind of like what we saw. Arch Manning was kind of a similar caliber of a name that was able to attract other stars in the class to come join him. And I think that Raiola has that type of gravitational pull. He is that type of a recruit. He's that type of a prospect. So pay attention. Let's see who decides to come there amongst the 2024 recruiting class. Just the big thing here, though, if he plays up to his potential, he's got a huge arm. He throws on the run really well. He can stretch the field really easily. If they are able to build around him effectively by the time he takes his first start, which I don't think should be his freshman year, they shouldn't rush him onto the field like we saw happen with Dante Moore. If by 2 years from now he gets on the field and they got some good pieces around him, Nebraska can be a dangerous team in the Big Ten. I don't think that they'll ever be good enough to win it just yet, but they can still be in that top 4 discussion amongst those top teams.
When you change programs, Joe, and this happens everywhere, whether it was Saban when he went back to Alabama and they started recruiting, like, remember when he went to Alabama, the first kid that he got committed was Julio Jones. You got to get these big-time 5-star dudes to flip and recruit around them. I think they can do that. I 1,000% believe that they can recruit some good pieces around him to be better than what they have been. So I'm not expecting that kid to go in there and change everything and them get to a playoff or national title.
No.
But did you watch what they had at quarterback this year?
Guys that probably wouldn't start on most other Power 5 rosters.
Probably not. It's not even an upgrade. It's a massive upgrade. Okay? I get what you're saying, that they got to put pieces around him. I think that they will put pieces around him. I don't think that there's a foregone conclusion that Matt Rule is not going to be able to recruit at a better level. They're already recruiting at a better level. Recruiting is the lifeblood that fuels the dreams of champions. Shout out to former Kentucky wide receiver Dickie Lyons, who that's his saying. But it's true. Look, it's great for Nebraska. At worst, even if the kid doesn't even play well, the perception of other dudes following in that footprint becomes a bigger deal now. And look, college football is better when Nebraska is better. Joe, we saw they continuously sell out their stadium every single home game. They have a very passionate fan base. I want Nebraska to be great again, right? Like I want, and I probably shouldn't have said it that way because people are going to think it's political. I didn't mean it that way. But I want them to get back to winning 8, 9, 10 games a year. That makes college football better. Does this kid have enough ability to do that? He's not going to run all over you. He's got an explosive arm. Explosive arm. He might have one of the best arms that I've seen in maybe the last 3 or 4 recruiting cycles. Like, he's that good. He's going to struggle out of the gate. And this is a building process, okay? Great for Nebraska, but I want to say this too now, all right? This does not change my perception whatsoever for Georgia. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago or last week. changes nothing for me when it comes to what I think about Georgia. And look, they got massive news today with Carson Beck coming back, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. But I like it for Nebraska. I like it for the kid. I think he's got roots there. He's got ties there. It feels right. It's not like, Joe, he has no ties to Nebraska. They threw him a massive
right. He was getting paid.
deal.
Yeah, right.
You know, like this he's got ties there. And you know what? The kid is a legacy. I guarantee you that the kid went to games with his dad. Okay, grew up maybe wanting to be there.
I think he was still going to games this, like, I forget what it was exactly, so I'm not going to make a false anecdote here, but I believe he was still, like, this season after he was committed to Georgia, he was still attending games.
Right. I mean,
so he's still
what are we talking about here? Like, you thought the kid wasn't going to – you thought that this wasn't ever a possibility? Because it 1,000% now is the realistic thing that happened.
One thing I'll say with this as well, I feel like it was really hard to attract recruits to come to Nebraska. And let's be honest with ourselves. I'm not trying to be negative to Nebraska fans, but for kids from Texas or from Florida or from California, it's not exactly a sexy location to want to come there. Midwestern states, yes, a lot of those kids, you can recruit them. But in order to get to that next level, you have to be able to recruit different regions of the country where there are hotbeds in recruiting. And the Midwest generally does not produce a lot of big name recruits. Scott Frost failed horribly at being able to bring guys in there. The Nebraska recruiting class of 2024 is fine. But again, as I said a second ago, this makes waves for this cycle and for the next few cycles to bring in better recruits, because there is going to be so much attention on Nebraska football the minute that he takes his first snap. Even if he takes only a couple of snaps in his freshman season, they're going to get talked about way, 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 way more than we're used to even discussing them.
Well, oh, my bad.
I was going to say that level of name recognition helps with kids that are up and coming and that are looking for where they want to play. I think that's going to pay massive, massive dividends for them.
Well, look, they do have some decent pieces that he could work with instantly. Now, they're the 23 overall class and right now. And look, there's no telling what they're going to be able to do on National Signing Day. Can they flip some kids now that the Raiola news has come out? Can they get themselves into the teens? Can they get themselves into the top 15? That remains to be seen. But look, Carter Nelson, a 6'4" tight end from the state of Nebraska, he's committed. But, Joe, I go and look. They got multiple offensive linemen that can play. Like, they have built somewhat decently. But do they have to get better? Do they have the dudes on the outside that could beat a Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, Washington? No, they don't. But we're also not asking him in year one. This is a 3-4 year, maybe even 5-year process that's going to have to take place. If they start getting kids to flip on signing day, they go into the portal and get some receivers, you start feeling better. Now, I will say this, Joe, you remember we talked about this during the season. The only real thing we talked about with Nebraska, they played tough for Matt Rule. If they had any offensive pulse whatsoever, they're beating Iowa. Remember, we're all sitting there watching the Iowa game. They're going to beat Iowa, okay? There are games that they completely left on the table that they could have won. Defensively, they were not an issue. Joe, they were actually played pretty well.
Yeah.
If a kid like this, now I do have I'm going to say this. I told you in pre-production. I told you last week. I still have my skepticisms on him, meaning Raiola. I still think his processing, I think, is a little questionable. But this isn't Matt Rule's first rodeo, all right? You talked about, now I don't know if Matt Rule was the head coach. This isn't the first time he's got a big-name quarterback to go to his school. Wasn't he the head coach when Stidham committed to Baylor?
Let me check.
I mean, like, he's been able to convince some high-profile quarterbacks in high school recruiting to go to his school.
Yeah, he was there 2017 to 2019. Jared Stidham was at Baylor. It was 2015. So no, that wasn't him.
Okay,
that wasn't him. But
I thought that he might have been the head coach. I was one. Man,
This is probably without a doubt the best, most talented. I know the timeline's kind of hard to keep up with because it's
Yep.
all the shit that went down with Baylor. This is without a doubt the most talented quarterback that he's had.
no.
I think that one thing that's like a little bit of where I'm more concerned is not with Raiola's talent that you're talking about, because I think that the kid, look, it's a very cliche to compare players to Patrick Mahomes, but he has that improviser, big arm skill set that gets that name brought up.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm a little more concerned, and I think he'll be fine and be able to play with maybe a limited roster because he can create for himself. But like Scott Satterfield, is he really that good of an offensive coordinator that we're going to be optimistic for him to scheme some stuff up for him? I feel like he's been uneventful as an offensive coordinator in his time calling plays.
Well, Joe, here's the truth behind that, though. Name an elite offense in the Big Ten this year.
Sorry, Marcus Satterfield.
I mean, you got Oregon coming in. You got Washington coming in. There are so many games that they left on the table. They can be an 8-win team next year. They can be an 8-9-win team in 2 years.
I think that's more realistic. In 2 years, when he starts,
Right.
8 to 9 wins is realistic. I still think that as Washington and Oregon and UCLA and USC enter the conference, and I don't think that they play all those teams off the top of my head, it is going to be even harder for them to be bowl eligible in 2024. But that's not the year that you're looking to take that next step. The year that you're taking the next step is 2025, his first full year as a starter. You've hopefully had 2 recruiting cycles of good offensive linemen, good receivers, and you have a good defensive coordinator that you can legitimately do some damage. But man, it is going to be hard to go up against Michigan State as they're developing. Wisconsin, they're going to be 3 years in on Luke Fickell. They really, really need to get caught up because there's going to be a lot of competition now in the Big Ten with all of these teams.
Maybe. You're not wrong. But again, Joe, like they can beat these Iowa teams. He instantly comes in, he can beat them.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, they're going to kick the crap out of Minnesota and Iowa, and maybe not kick the crap out of Iowa,
but again, let's just say he comes in as a freshman and he's able to generate any form of offense and beats those teams, Joe. You're talking about a bowl, not even a bowl team. You're talking about a fringe 8-win football team right now because of him flipping. Because and I know that he's good enough right now. Yeah, he might have turnovers. He might throw picks. Joe, he's not going to the kid's good enough where he can generate you a touchdown or two. For them to I'm not asking the kid to come in here and be Washington or LSU's offense from this past year. I'm asking him to score 14 points, and they're going to win the football game.
So would you start him right off the bat?
I don't know that. I don't know that. Let's see how
I think even if he looks somewhat ready, I'm not rushing him out there. Because like how often do we see redshirt freshmen play capably well? Like the closest examples that we have.
You mean like Lincoln did to Caleb Williams? I mean, this is
Caleb Williams is a massive exception though.
Remember Spencer Rattler poo-pooed the bed.
But he also didn't do that until halfway through the season. Though.
Sure, but what I'm saying is let's not act as if that the kid can't come in and generate offense, because the kid can come in there right now and generate offense.
I don't know if I want to just shove him out there to generate offense. And I would hope that's not the notion.
There's nobody on the roster better than him at quarterback.
But sometimes, okay, well, here's a really good example. This past year, we saw them just shove Dante Moore out there because they didn't really have anybody better. And then they kept rotating guys because he got banged up a little bit. He threw a bunch of turnovers, and the situation soured so badly, we don't know what the full story was. But one could argue that because of the way that he played in that offense, that maybe he felt a little bit sour about the situation. So I don't know if I'm Dylan Raiola and if I'm that coaching staff, if I want to rush him out there. Yes, he's probably the best, most talented quarterback on the roster and most ready to play guy on the roster the minute that he steps in the door. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to put him out there just to just to burn them. This isn't the NFL, in my opinion. This isn't the NFL where
I'm not saying to do that. All I'm
I know.
saying is
I'm not so much
again,
disagreeing with you. I'm just postulating here. I'm just saying that like
you and those big dictionary words.
Shut up. My point is that I'm not going to put him out there like an NFL rookie quarterback and force him out there so he can learn on the job. The jump from high school to college is difficult as a true freshman trying to play specifically at the quarterback position. Other positions are different. Quarterback's too hard for me. I'm not throwing him out there.
Let him play in the non-conference against Dookie State and see how he does. But a Big Ten team that does have some issues right now?
It sounds so weird to say.
It sounds so weird to call them to say that they're in the Big Ten, but they are, Joe. That's the USC Trojans. Look, we just had, and we'll announce this tomorrow, okay? So we just had a guest on, a very big-time college football guest, and we had this conversation with him. Joe, do I believe that stars matter? Mainly, yes, because there's a reason that Georgia, there's a reason that Bama, there's a reason that Florida State and other teams, there's a reason they're all winning. There's a reason why Michigan and Ohio State win. They recruit at a high level. USC is losing way too many dudes way too quickly. Damani Jackson, okay, the former 5-star corner, hits the portal. Tackett Curtis, former 5-star linebacker, just entered the portal. Fabian Ross enters the portal. Malachi Nelson, the big-time 5-star quarterback, has entered the portal. What is going on at USC?
First of all, I was attacked last signing day last year because I made the statement that I thought that Lincoln Riley's recruiting class was underwhelming. USC fans were so upset with me making that statement. And not only was it overrated and it was underwhelming, the class that they had in 2023, but most of your top players have decided to already jump ship. Most of these kids are leaving. Look, Blake, there's two ways that I see that this plays out. One, Lincoln Riley.
Don't steal my take.
Wait. Lincoln Riley is going to take the Chargers job, and he is mailing it in, and he's putting in minimal effort because they called him, and they're interested in him. The second is if that reality doesn't come to fruition, because frankly, the NFL should not be attracted to him as a head coach, maybe as an offensive coordinator after he gets fired next year in the middle of the season. I am calling it right now. We saw this happen with Jimbo Fisher, and we're talking about it right now with Billy Napier. We can find a lot of similarities to what just happened with Jimbo and what is happening right now with this USC roster. The future of the quarterback position, one of the most talented quarterbacks in the past couple of years, in Malachi Nelson, is leaving. The quarterback room looks like shit right now, and they don't have a 2024 guy currently.
Well, they're about to get Will Howard.
Does that put them in the national championship conversation? Because it sure the hell does not. I think that they win 7 games again, and he is gone. He's done. They're going to fire him.
I don't know about that. They'd owe him a lot of money. They'd have to Jimbo him. And from
Blake, wait, Blake, if you recall though, last offseason in about like May,
USC is
I said
A&M.
I said that they were going to fire Jimbo in the middle of the season, and he got fired.
Yeah, but this isn't A&M though. USC didn't want to pay the Clay Helton buyout, and they were so cheap in doing it, they let him come back another year. That's a completely different scenario.
I don't think it's completely different. I think if they wanted to find the money, they could.
Because there's nobody at USC right now. Look, I don't mean this in a wrong way. LA is not the LA that we remember. Like, it's not the town. It's not the city. It's not the place like it used to be under Pete Carroll. But I got to start asking questions in reference to, number one, if it was just one side of the football, I'd be like, okay, well, maybe these kids were really loyal to Alex Grinch and they're leaving, and that's a reason. But, Joe, you have Georgia hiring the current but now former USC DB coach. How many of those kids are about to go with him to Georgia across country? How many of those kids are going to commit to the University of Georgia? losing a guy like Malachi Nelson and replace, I guess, the replacement of Caleb Williams, you're going to tell me it's Will Howard. Dude, I don't like
it's a joke. It's a joke. Like that's the best that we can do. You're supposed to be this brilliant offensive mind. You should be able to attract.
I will say
Cam
this though. I will say this though. What is he? Because look, you could say whatever you want about Lincoln Riley. Now I'm going to defend him a little bit here. You ready? The dude knows quarterback play. Like the dude knows offense. What does he see in Will Howard that maybe you and I do not see?
The cheapest option.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about on the field.
Yeah, I think this is the cheapest option for him. He doesn't want to pay the price for any of the top quality guys.
So I said that I thought in the guest segment that we had and we recorded earlier, this smells, I agree with you on one massive thing. This does smell as if that he could be going to the Chargers. And to be honest with you, Joe, I don't know if it's not a bad fit for him because he doesn't like to recruit at a high level. Okay, he can have a GM, which the Chargers fired their GM too, that can put the talent and put the pieces together. All he's got to do out there and coach, that might be what he wants to do. And he might have better success at doing that.
I also think that if he's, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic in saying that he doesn't belong in the NFL. He is a bright offensive mind, and I agree with what you're saying.
He's a hell of an offensive mind.
Yes, I agree with that sentiment of what you're talking about here, because if he's smart and he's seeing everything that's going on right now, he's using his agent to figure out how does he take the Chargers job, because he gets to not have to move. He doesn't have to travel as far to get to the stadium. Maybe he has to forego the helicopter rides that he was given or whatever the hell that was in that whole joke. But that's really the smartest move for him right now, because we're so far into the portal cycle. Signing day is right around the corner. Their recruiting class is ranked 18th. And again, I say this all the time when we bring up these ranking numbers. People like to say, like, oh, the star ratings are not reflective of how the coaching staff evaluates the players. Whatever. That class that they have right now is good, but not up to the standard of what they need to be good in the Big Ten in their first year. If he is smart, and I think he is smart, he's jumping to the NFL. I completely agree with you. It has to be. It's the only thing that makes sense, because who has he brought in the portal? He's done nothing over the past 2 weeks since this has happened.
Well, I mean, so look, they do have 4 commits from the portal. They did go get a deep snapper, which I'm sure that you love. I do think that the Nate Clifton kid from Vandy is actually a pretty decent pickup. I mean, the kid had 5.5 sacks at Vandy, so which really is probably like 8.5 sacks anywhere else in the country. He had like 7.5 tackles for loss. They get the Arnold kids from Oregon State. They have built a little bit defensively. I mean, they do get some pieces, but we got a long way to go before. And look, I like Tackett Curtis, the kids from Louisiana. They upgraded at linebacker with Tackett out and the Easton Arnold kid in. Like, they upgraded a position there without question from Oregon State. I just don't know how good they're going to be, man. I think that it's not looking good for USC at all. You can't lose that many high-profiled, high-caliber, high-talent players and think that it's not a problem. It's one thing if – we talked about this last night. It's one thing if Georgia does it, but Georgia's bringing in the number 1 class every single year, so they can sustain losing guys. And by the way, who's to say that Damani Jackson doesn't go with his DB coach, doesn't go to Georgia?
Right.
Then what? Okay, so – there comes a point where you just can't lose those dudes.
And to that point, Georgia has 5 years of recruiting, that there is a buildup of talent, that they're not really worried, like we talked about. But the biggest thing, and I said this when we did the interview that's going to be published tomorrow during the day, and you kind of alluded to this, with the new defensive coordinator coming in, I would have expected roster turnover. But to see 3 receivers and your eventual long-term plan at quarterback all hop in the portal and the possibility of more hopping in the portal, that signals to me that there's something going on here. And I'm not like trying to be, insidious with what I'm saying here.
You think the NIL collective's not paying what they told kids they'd pay them?
That's not what I'm getting at, because I don't have any sourcing, and I think that making an erroneous statement like that can be, it can be a very messed up thing to do. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. But there clearly has to be some level of disconnect. And when we see this happening, it usually means that there's a disconnect between the head coach and the players. Like I don't know about you, but in college, I was in a locker room with a coach that at one point that we thought that he was going to get fired or might have left or whatnot. And the dynamic is weird. The dynamic is really weird. And this was pre-transfer portal. So in any opportunity where they feel like the dynamic's not good, guys are going to find ways to leave, especially if they're not from the area. Maybe they sense that their coach is on the way out and he's going to the NFL.
Why do I feel like, last thing for me, I feel like they're about to get waxed in the Big Ten?
Oh, they will. They're not built up front to – their defense might be, because their defense coordinator is great and he's physical. They're physical, but their offensive line's not built to go up against these defensive lines.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see. All right. Let's do this. We got to talk about Gerad Parker and what's going to happen at Notre Dame and the OC. Then we'll make our playoff picks. Let's talk about our good friends, though, over at Home Field Apparel, your one-stop shop for all of your apparel needs when it comes to college. Look, man, it's getting cold out there. Those retro jackets are amazing. Did you see that?
So sick.
Did you see that Tulane jacket, the baby blue with the green?
It's so fire.
I hate Tulane as an LSU fan, but that jacket's really nice. But go over to Home Field Apparel, use that promo code Ruffino Joe, get 15% off your order. Let's talk about them. We'll talk about some of you LSU fans might want to know if Mike Denbrock's going to Notre Dame. He's not. What is their replacement? Gerad Parker going to Troy, and then we'll make our college football playoff picks. We do that next.
Ruffino and Joe Show is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, which is the best, without a doubt, premium collegiate apparel brand that is out there. They have over 150 different colleges that you can choose from, whether you're an Illinois fan or a Rutgers fan, maybe you're an LSU fan like Blake, or maybe you're an Alabama fan, whatever it is, even Idaho. They have so many different designs for so many different football programs that I can guarantee you're going to find some great stuff to help root for your favorite team. I've already gotten my Notre Dame stuff. Blake has his LSU stuff. Make sure you head on over to homefieldapparel.com to check out your team's collection of clothing apparel that they have on the website. And when you do so, when you check out, make sure you use promo code Ruffino Joe to get 15% off your order. That is RUFFINO, Ruffino Joe. Head on over to homefieldapparel.com and get your college gear today.
Gerad Parker is heading down south from Indiana, the great state of Indiana, to Troy. Joe, I got to admit, shout out to Gerad Parker for high-level evaluation and going to a roster that's ready-made to win now. It's a hell of a awareness by Gerad Parker, and it's also a hell of an awareness to get the hell out of Dodge of Notre Dame that could be a sinking ship.
All right. Screw you for the last part that you threw in there. No, man, I think that Troy, you got yourselves a great coach, man. I'm so happy for you guys. I'm glad that you weren't afraid to give him what he was looking for in order to get him to leave. What is just a tremendous job, a great offense that he's going to be giving up to be a G5 coach, and we're going to miss him. We're really going to miss him. I'm deeply saddened as a Notre Dame fan that Gerad Parker is gone. Look, Blake,
you can't even sarcasm well.
No, because you know that I'm.
Yeah, I'm joking. You love this because he's leaving Notre Dame.
I literally thought that we were going to get stuck with the guy, and I was trying to be optimistic. And now we have an opportunity to start over, Blake. We have the opportunity to start over. I don't care. Look, we have a new athletic administration, Blake. Spend the money. Spend the money.
On
good options on the table.
On who?
It's 3 guys.
All right,
I said Andy Ludwig. That relationship
doesn't fit the quarterback that you just brought in, though. You know what I mean? It also doesn't really fit the car kid to me.
I think he at least fits the difficulty of trying to recruit and develop skill players and to get them to work within the offense. I think that fits the tone that they're looking for. He's at the bottom of the list, and I don't think it's likely. The one that I really like, kid, is young coach, born in South Bend, Indiana. Talking about Charlie Weiss Jr. at Ole Miss. I know that Notre Dame fans roll their eyes at that, and they're going to say, what the hell are you talking about? I understand he's not the play caller at Ole Miss, but to take somebody who has been a part of an offense that has been so productive and so explosive with good players, but not the most elite position group, not the most elite recruits that are on that team, and has turned them into some of the best players in the SEC, I think that they got to at least consider it.
All right. So look, there is, I don't know this gentleman's name. I'm not trying to call him out. Okay. But Bruce Strawhan, do you know him?
No, I need to look him up.
Okay. It says that official Notre Dame superfan. He's seen on ABC 57 News. He's saying it's Mike Denbrock, the LSU OC. I would be very surprised if they're able to do that. I just don't. There's no way that I see that it's happening as of currently right now as they extended him. But, Joe, I agree with you on 3 big points here. Number one, you do got to catch up with the times. Like, you have to catch up with what everybody else is doing. The days of you lining up and just running the football and being under center, I'm not saying they have to be done, but they have a chance, and I beg them to try to do this from just I'm not even a Notre Dame fan, but you got to do this. You got to get out of BK's shadow. Like, BK is known for having dudes like Ian Book lining up with great offensive linemen, running the football, being under center. You got to get out of that threshold. He's not there anymore. You talked about that they have to go and spend money. You're 1,000% right. They have to go spend money. If they don't, they're not going to get anybody there worth of them. Maybe they can get Charlie Weiss Jr. Maybe they can get Charlie Weiss Jr. Let's see. But I will say this. Jeff Lebby also didn't call plays at Ole Miss either, and he wound up being pretty decent at Oklahoma in his first real job of calling plays. I don't hate that, but you're going to have to get up with the times. Notre Dame fans hate a guy like me saying that, okay? And that's fine because they feel like I'm coming at it from some biased point of view. If you do not catch up with what other teams in college football are doing, you're going to get left behind. Here's the truth. I love Brian Kelly to death. I don't think Brian Kelly was able to get the personnel in there to do exactly what he wanted to do offensively. You know how I know that? I just saw what he did at LSU.
Yeah.
Yep. All right? So you can say and be mad at anything that I just said there, but you're going to have to spread the ball out. Audric Estime is a great back. He's going to be a good NFL back. Good for him. You got to be different. You got to light teams up on the scoreboard. This tough, gritty Indiana, Notre Dame, Catholic Jesus, I love it. But look, you literally saw Fickle go out and get Phil Longo. Completely different from what Wisconsin's doing. You got to catch up with the times. You got to catch up with them right now.
I think part of the problem, and this is something that we have never really talked about, we actually don't even really know what Gerad Parker wanted to call. Like, I think that what had really happened here is that Tommy Rees built an offense for what he wanted, which was bully ball, which is what he's doing now at Alabama. That works at Alabama. I don't know if it necessarily works for what Notre Dame's needs are and what they capably can do. I think it works at Alabama because their offensive linemen are all 340 pounds plus, and they're ridiculously big. Notre Dame obviously recruits amazing offensive linemen, but we see that it works better at Alabama. It didn't really work at Notre Dame, and Parker was forced into that. I think now as this roster turns over a little bit and there was a little bit more of recruiting of these spread style players, the next guy does need to be a spread style, air raid style offensive coordinator. I like Charlie Weiss Jr. And then the other one that I wanted to bring up, I think that Kirby Moore from Mizzou is a name that's going to get brought up throughout this process. I like him as well. I just think in general, you have to look at the middle tier pack of SEC teams that you might be able to sneak up on and steal one of their coaches and maybe catch them off guard by offering too much money for them to cover. But the SEC right now has produced a lot of offensive prowess because they have transitioned away from the 3 yards in a cloud of dust football to the we're going to spread you out and we're going to attack you deep and we're going to run all these different route concepts. Go grab one of those guys. Don't try to be like the Big Ten. Try to be unique. The Big Ten is in the early 2000s still. Go look at the SEC and go steal one of those guys.
Last thing, because we have some breaking news here, okay, in the college football world. But let me just end it with this. Moore better not go to Notre Dame.
Dante Moore?
No.
Kirby Moore.
Kirby Moore better not go to Notre Dame. I don't think it's a good fit for him.
Why?
Because I think that Missouri's a borderline playoff team in the SEC right now, and I do think that his offensive prowess at a place like Missouri can lead him somewhere else before Notre Dame.
Notre Dame's schedule is easier than Missouri's. I think that they could get to the playoff just as easily.
I don't like the fit.
Look at how many Notre Dame coaches have gone on to get head coaching jobs. And I know that was under Brian Kelly, but it's not hard to get offered jobs.
Sure. He's okay. Defensive coaches. Where's Mike Denbrock at?
He's an offensive coordinator.
Interesting. Just saying. Look, they got to catch up with the times or they're going to get left in the dust. All right, we got some breaking news here. You ready?
Yep.
Don't mess with Dan Lanning. How about the Oregon Ducks? Breaking. Former 5-star quarterback Dante Moore has committed to the University of Oregon. Now, Joe, last week, Dylan Gabriel, committed to Oregon, and you said that you thought that Dante Moore would also go to Oregon, and I said...
Yeah, what did you say?
I said that's exactly where he should go.
You said no chance in hell, I think was what your wording was.
What I did say is it didn't make sense if he wanted to play now. Seems as if that's not the case. Dan Lanning recruiting his rear end off, Dante Moore to Oregon. How about that?
There is clearly a bright future that is being developed in Oregon. And we've spoken so highly on Dante Moore and what he's capably going to be able to do at Oregon with an empty checkbook from Phil Knight. I think this is awesome. And I think that it's good for a talented player to take a step back and realize that he was thrown out there too soon and just figure it out and learn on the job and learn from a veteran guy in Dylan Gabriel. He's going to be great. He's going to be great once he takes over for Gabriel. And look, I'm also going to throw this out there. I wouldn't put it past him to beat out Dylan Gabriel. I don't think it's likely, but it's certainly possible.
Well, what this does is it buys Dante more time to sit and learn because look, I don't care what happens. Now, can Dante Moore beat him in camp during the non-playing portion of the year? Can he beat him this spring? Yeah. But I think they're going to run Dylan Gabriel out there, and because of seniority type of, like, he's got the experience, you get Dante Moore to sit behind him, learn, and you're not in a lot of real rush to get him out there like maybe a Nebraska would be with Dylan Raiola. I mean, look, Dan Lanning, man, Phil Knight and the boys, it's a massive addition. Now, Oregon fans were mad at me last week because I said I didn't understand the fit of why you're just getting a one-year rental with Dylan Gabriel, because we talked about Dante Moore, and I just said, why not go get Dante Moore and let him be the star in the future of your program? Well, they didn't care what I said. They went and got both of them. It's like, hey, I want what I want, and I want it now, and they go and get a very talented quarterback. Now, Joe, he struggled a lot this year in the Pac-12. at UCLA. And it's not as if that Chip Kelly is a bad offensive play caller. He's a really damn good offensive play caller. I do think this is a great fit because he gets to sit, maybe can buy a year, get stronger. But Dan Lanning, man, making the Oregon Ducks, learning from his counterpart at Georgia, learning from his mentor in Kirby Smart. Hell of an addition, hell of a pickup.
And I also, just to add to that, I think what's different here, or not different, but what works well with Oregon, and I think what is going to work well with developing the future, is paying close attention to offense. And I'm not saying that Kirby didn't do that, but what I'm getting at is having not only the next guy up figured out, but having that plan in line after that. Ty Thompson hopped in the portal, so they needed to figure out, okay, who is the young guy that we're working with? I don't know if they were necessarily in the running for any of the top 2024 guys. It's not a very deep quarterback class like last season. But to grab a guy that's played before, that has experience, so theoretically, if Dylan Gabriel goes down, we can call upon Dante Moore, is massive for them. But at the end of the day, to have this kid who was considered by many to be the best quarterback in the class to come in, sit for a year, get even better, play for you for a season, and then go on to the NFL, the window for them to win a national championship, it's going to be open for them for the next few years.
Well, it's especially just getting to the playoff, right? Like,
I mean, I would go as far as say I think it's foregone conclusion that they get to the playoff. A 12 team, there's realistically going to be 3 or 4 Big Ten teams that get in. They're in the top 4 of the Big Ten right now. They'd have to have a massive collapse.
Yeah, I mean, the only argument that I could put them at 2, but the problem is that you have Washington there, and until they beat Washington, I'm going to stick with Washington, believe it or not, on this. Which,
come on, Washington's going to be good next year, but they're starting from scratch at their defensive line, linebacker position, offensive line spots, the quarterback at receiver.
On defense right now, anyway, they're not losing anything. They're 100.
Braylon Trice is going to be a first round pick.
I get what you're saying. I'm not saying that they can't make the playoff. What I'm just saying is I'm trying to think in my mind. You got Michigan, Ohio State, you have Oregon, Washington that being there. Maybe Penn State, maybe, like a hard maybe. I don't hate that. I don't hate that. I just be very curious to see, because look, you're going to get 3 or 4 teams in from the SEC. All right. And so there could be a very real scenario that you only get 2 or 3. I mean, Joe, if they're 10-2 and maybe, I mean, let me ask you this question. If they're 10-2 in the Big Ten and now you're looking at what Ole Miss is doing, then what? Like if Ole Miss is 11-1, 10-2, then what? You start having to make some very difficult situations for other conferences. And by the way, Joe, I just throwing this out there, you still have other, the 7-5 method is what they're probably going to. So can they? Yes. I just we'll see. I know you don't like that. I know you don't like that answer, but just how I feel. All right.
I'm going to probably save the game picks, right? Because I don't want to rush that. I would like to actually have
so smart. We're already so look, we're going to have to punt on these playoff picks. Well, we can almost do a half of a show. Shit, we could do a whole show on what we believe on the playoffs. Let's do this. Let's punt that until Wednesday. So I'll save my handy dandy notes right here. But we can end it out here though. Carson Beck has announced that he is going to be returning to Georgia. Joe, there was a lot of rumors swirling around Carson Beck. People are saying that, he's either going to go to the NFL draft, he's going to enter the portal, he wants $4 million to return to Georgia. In a blink of a tweet or an X or whatever you're calling a post, just like that, he put it all to bed. Carson Beck returning to Georgia. I think the biggest addition or biggest retention that Georgia's had in quite some time. Carson Beck is back. Great for them. Absolutely fantastic for Georgia.
Just from an NFL draft perspective, this is the right decision for him to make, to come back with a really good roster to make another national championship run if he has that aspiration. He was so close, just barely robbed of that opportunity. as a competitor, why wouldn't he want to take up that chance? But I also look at this quarterback class for the 2024 NFL draft. Realistically, he would have at the best been the third quarterback off the board, and I don't think that's likely. I think Jaden Daniels ends up getting picked ahead of him. Maybe he beats out Bo Nix, but if he decides to go back and he's in the 2025 class, there's a lot of question marks of who the top player is. He very likely will be the first overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft. Financially, this is the best decision for him. Sometimes we sit here and say, guys like him, just go and declare, go get your money. If you have the hype behind you, just go. This is not the case for him. There's so much more money to be made if he decides to wait, he's patient, and he goes in the following draft. And he's going to be a fantastic pro. If he improves a little bit more and refines a couple of the things in his game, the guy is going to be amazing in the NFL. I love him as a prospect, and I love this for Georgia that he's coming back.
Well, look, Joe, you said this the other day on our show, or I think it was yesterday on our show. You said if he, officially when he comes back, that you would put him as your number one team going into the preseason.
I don't know why I wouldn't.
Well, and look, they could be adding other pieces. They just get a new DB coach. Maybe some of those former 5-stars go over to Georgia. But look, I do think one thing that is going to be interesting. I said it yesterday. I'll say it again. If they add a guy like Trevor Etienne from the portal, the running back from Florida, I do still question maybe they have some weapons on the outside. Maybe Ladd McConkey, or as we like to call him on this show, Ladd McConkey returns. Don't think Brock Bowers is, but they're fine. They're still going to dominate dudes. Now, the biggest question that I have for Georgia right now is you have some offensive linemen that you have to replace. Cedric Van Pran is a dude that has been there a long time. I feel like Cedric Van Pran's been at Georgia since 1995, since the Clinton administration, okay? Like, that's how long he's been there. They got the depth that could, help them out along the offensive line, but there are still question marks. The one thing that they won't have a question mark is quarterback. It's a big return. I think Georgia's still, even right now, a top 4 team. Let's see what he does going into the bowl game. I like this a lot for Georgia, and I love it, like you mentioned, for Beck, because I think he could be the first quarterback, maybe second quarterback off the board in next year's draft. Joe, you're talking about him going from a second-round pick to potentially the number 1 pick overall. There's a $20 million difference in there, right? Like a massive difference from him coming out now. All this rumors about him wanting $4 million to return was clearly BS. Good on Carson Beck to return to Georgia. And look, in a 12-team playoff next year, Joe, there's not a – look, I'm going to be real with you. There might be 2 teams that can beat them. I know that Texas this year could beat them because they beat Bama. Like, I feel good that Georgia can line up and beat Texas too, but I think that there are a couple teams. We saw Bama do it. Yeah, they were hurt. It is what it is. But they're instantly a top 4 team in my mind getting into the playoff next year with him returning.
Well put. Absolutely. Don't doubt Georgia.
Why are people doubting Georgia? The only time you should doubt Georgia is when he plays.
Recency bias. This recency
of – so they're 29-1 in the last 30 games. Like, what are we talking about?
They lost the game in the SEC championship game, and Alabama beat them, so everyone's immediately going to do the – I saw somebody rank Alabama and Texas ahead of them for the 2024 season, as an early power rank. Somebody ranked Alabama and Texas ahead of Georgia for the 2024 today. I got to go find it. I'll send it to you if I find it.
Well, look,
insane.
All I'm going to say is they're probably about to add a 5-star corner from the portal. They're getting better. That's so insane. And then, look, you ever add Trevor Etienne to that? My goodness. All right.
Bonkers.
We will do the playoff picks. Sorry we couldn't get to it. Just so much news happening today on this fine Monday. We will see you again Wednesday. Y'all have a good night. Peace.